Okay, I've maximized my spreadsheet again, just so we have the whole thing in front of us here. And I'm ready to do a little calculating now in Google Sheets. This is where Google Sheets really shines. This is what makes Google Sheets way better than your pocket calculator that you still have left over from high school, rattling around in a drawer somewhere. Um, the first thing I'm going to do is remember I spoke in the last video about how this error margin is really an estimate of the range of median rents in Davidson County, Tennessee, for this first row. This would be the where the real median rent in Davidson County falls. The Census Bureau would be 90% confident that the actual median rent, the one we would have gotten if we talked to all renters in Davidson County, would be somewhere in in the range defined by this error margin. But let's go ahead and do the math involved in defining that range. It's pretty simple. We just have to add the error margin to the 1192 rent to get the upper end of the range, and then subtract it from 1192 to get the lower end of the range. Google Sheets can do that for us. We're going to need a little bit of room to do it, so I'm going to insert a couple of columns here. Just going to click on the C and the D, the column titles, to highlight the whole column. I held my mouse, let's see, left mouse button down as I did that to highlight everything, and then click a right click and choose Insert two columns to the left. So that gives me these two blank columns now that I can work with. And you can insert as many columns as you like anywhere that you like in the spreadsheet. So let's see, this would be the lower end of the range. Let's call that between, or no, from. That would work better. From, and then the upper end will say to. So we're going to say what the median rent is. The median rent is somewhere from this to that. To get the from, remember we need to subtract the error margin from the median rent. In a calculator, you would push buttons, right? You would punch in 1192 and then hit the minus button, and then punch in 25 and hit equal, right? Well, here's how you do kind of the same process in a spreadsheet. You start with an equal sign. That's a way of telling Google Sheets that you're going to give it instructions rather than data or text to just simply display. So you're programming is what you're doing. So start with the equal sign and then say, okay, I want to take whatever's over here, in this case the 1192, and see how when I click on it, Google Sheets assigns it a cell address. This is cell A2. It's in column A, and it's in row 2. So it's kind of like playing Battleship, isn't it? This is A2, whatever's in A2, and I'm going to subtract from it, just hit the minus key, whatever is over here in cell B2. So I just click on B2, see how it goes ahead and provides the cell address. You can manually type these if you want, but it's a whole lot easier to do what I just did and just click on them. And then to get it to actually do the math, just press the Enter key on your keyboard. There we go. So it's 1,167. That would be the low end of this range in Davidson County. Now, Sheets is already asking us, hey, do you want to do this for the rest of the values? And of course we do. So if you click this checkbox, it'll do it automatically. See that, how easy that was? It just repeated the calculation that I did here, but for this row, this row, this row, this row, and this row. And notice how each time it updated those cell addresses. Here for Davidson County, it was A2 minus B2, but for Robertson County, it needs to be A3 minus B3, basically these two here. And so the spreadsheet is smart enough to do that automatically. And likewise for all these others. If it hadn't offered us that opportunity, it's easy enough to do manually. You would just highlight whatever you want to copy, and you see that little blue square in the lower right corner. You can either drag it down, hold it with your mouse and drag it down, and it'll copy it to all of the cells that you highlight, or you can simply double click on it. Point at it until the cursor changes from an arrow to a big plus sign, and then double click, and it'll do it for as many rows as have some sort of piece of information or data here. It'll stop when it hits a blank row. But those are all different ways that you can, we call this copying a formula. That's what we wrote up here. That's the formula. Copying that formula down the column. And that's what really saves you a lot of time about spreadsheets, is because you can do that sort of thing. You can set up a calculation in one cell and then repeat it for a whole bunch of cells. Saves you a lot of time. Now to get the upper end of this rent range, we need to do the same sort of thing. Equal, remember, equal tells the spreadsheet that we're giving it instructions. This time I wanted to take whatever the median rent is and add to it, that's the plus sign, the error margin again. So it's the same as the other formula, we're just adding instead of subtracting. And that gives us the upper range of the median rent in Davidson County. And I'm going to autofill that for the rest of the values. There we go. I can resize these again. There we go. So now I know that the median rent in the data for Davidson County was $1,192 a month. And given the accuracy of the poll that these data come from, the actual median in Davidson County ranges somewhere between $1,167 a month and $1,217 a month. So a little bit lower and a little bit higher, but almost certainly somewhere in that range. So you learned a couple of things there. You learned about error margins, which is kind of interesting and useful. And you also learned how to do basic programming in a spreadsheet, how you set up this formula here and then copied it down the column. We could also have done it this way. Let me delete these values. If I had gone ahead and written these two formulas here, I can, just for Davidson County, I can replicate those for all the other counties that easily. I would just highlight the two that I want to copy and double click, and it would copy both of them at the same time, kind of in batch mode. That can save a lot of time as well. So that's how to do a basic calculation. All right, so let's do something else now. We've got this range here telling us that the rent in Davidson County is $1,192 a month, somewhere in reality between $1,167 and $1,217. And that's kind of an impressive figure, but when you're doing journalism with data, figures really need some kind of context, some way for people to be able to understand and what that number means in day-to-day life. And maybe a way to do this is to figure out how much income you would have to earn in a given month in order to be able to afford that kind of rent. It's oversimplistic to say, well, I would have to earn $1,192 a month to afford that apartment. Well, no, you'd actually have to earn more than that, because $1,192 is going to put the roof over your head, but it's not going to put food in the refrigerator, and it's not going to pay your car insurance and your other various expenses at living. You need more than just an apartment that you can be in. You need other things. In fact, there's a nationwide and long-standing guideline for this. Financial experts say that the amount of money you spend on your housing should be no more than 30% of your total income. So to be able to afford a $1,192 a month apartment, that $1,192 needs to be 30%, no more than 30% of what you earn every month. So what would that figure be? How much money would you have to make in a given month in order to comfortably afford this apartment? See if we can come up with that number. That gives people a way to relate, because most people know about what they earn in a month, and that might give them a better idea of whether this sort of an apartment is affordable for them. So let's do that. Now, here comes the most complicated math in the entire course, and the good news is I'm going to solve it for you. You might remember algebra from college. Or from high school. We're going to use a little bit of algebra. All we need to know is, let's see, I'm using the 955 figure here from Robertson County. So if I want to buy an apartment in Robertson County, the median rent is $955 a month, um, and 30% of what income is going to give me $955 a month, or allow me to afford this apartment. Well, mathematically, you would say that you would write that by saying 0.30, that's 30%, 0.30, times x. We're going to let x stand for the income that we're trying to figure out, equals $955, the rent that we need. So 0.30x equals 955. How do you get x by itself? Well, you probably remember, one thing you can do here is divide both sides by 0.30, because when you have an equation, it's perfectly fine to transform things by dividing both sides by the same thing, or multiplying or adding both sides to the same thing. And if we divide both sides by 0.30, then what happens is this 0.30 and this 0.30 end up being 1, basically. So you end up with 1x yeah, equals 955 over 0.30, or just basically x equals 955 over 30. So, and that's going to come down to an income of $3,183.30 a month in order to afford that $955 a month apartment. Well, so the point of this was to get this procedure here. This is what we need to do. We need to, in order to figure out the income, we need to divide whatever the monthly rent is by 0.30. So how do we tell the spreadsheet to do that? Let me go back to the spreadsheet. There it is. And all we need is, let's see, we need another column in here. Let's put it right here. Insert one column to the left. And let's call this the minimum income. In that this is the minimum income you would need to afford whatever median rent is specified over here. And remember how we do it, according to that algebra we just did, is equal, or instructions, right? Start with an equal sign. We need to take whatever the rent is and divide it by, that's the slash key, 0.30, just like that. Okay? And we can copy that down the column again. And let's see, we actually did the math for Robertson County. It was 3183, right? Yeah, 3183. So that worked. All right, so to afford that $1,192 a month apartment in Davidson County that we've been talking about, you're going to need to earn at least $3,973 a month, which is not actually I mean, that's actually a pretty good income, isn't it? Not quite what you could make, on minimum wage, but we'll look at that at the next step. Right now, what we probably need to do is format some of these numbers. These are dollar signs that we're talking about here, right? So it might be more intuitive if we can express them in dollars. So let's see. Everything up to here is a dollar figure. So I'm just going to highlight all these columns, and the easy way to do is just hit this dollar sign thing right here. See that? And there we go. It changes them all to currencies. And looks like we'll have to stretch the columns out a little bit again. They're all highlighted, so let's do that. There we go. And I don't really need the 00 after each of those figures, because it's always the same. I can shrink that down a little bit by highlighting the column and choosing this decrease decimal places button right here. See how when I do that, the decimal places go away, and we end up with just the whole numbers. Forgot to do it for minimum income here. Hold on. There we go. All right, so now we have them formatted as dollar amounts. And we know that a typical apartment in Davidson County is going to cost you $1,192 a month. And to afford it, you're going to need an income of about $3,973 a month. So now people have a way of kind of wrapping their heads around how expensive an apartment in Davidson County is. So if you're going to live there, you're going to need to make typically around almost $4,000 a month. Can you do that or not? Well, most people would know that. In the next video, we'll look at a way to further contextualize this by breaking this monthly income down to an hourly wage. And and looking at that in a couple of different ways.